I once interviewed a veteran. After we finished, he started chatting with me. He asked, "Young man, do you know what heaven looks like?" I said, "I don't." He told me, "The present is heaven." I asked, "Why?" He said, "Because peace is heaven." For museums about war, I think we all share the same mission. Even though we collect artifacts from times of conflict, what we truly honor is peace. That's the heart of what we do.
That's Wu Xianbin, the founder and curator of a private museum dedicated to the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression. Tucked away in the southern suburbs of Nanjing, Wu's museum has been open to the public for free since 2006, and it has never closed its doors. According to Wu, in the nearly 20 years since its founding, everything about the museum has changed, except for two things: the plaque marking its opening date and the curator himself. As a Nanjing local, Wu has poured his own savings into preserving the memory of a war that lasted 14 years from 1931 to 1945. Now in his early 60s, Wu is still carrying that mission forward. The city of Nanjing will never forget the darkest chapter in its history, the Nanjing Massacre. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China. The then capital, Nanjing, fell to Japanese troops on December 13th. Over the following 40 days, the city descended into horror. Japanese forces rampaged through the streets, looting, killing, and committing mass atrocities. It's estimated that more than 300,000 Chinese civilians and unarmed soldiers lost their lives in the brutal onslaught. Today, several museums and memorials stand in the city to preserve the memory of that tragedy, but Wu's museum is unique in its own way. At the entrance, visitors are greeted by a quote: "A nation without a sense of crisis is hopeless and beyond salvation," from Chinese playwright Tian Han, who also penned the lyrics to the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. Step inside and you'll see a massive engraved musical score of the national anthem, March of the Volunteers. Originally, it was created in 1935 to rally those fighting on the front lines against Japanese aggression. On the side wall are dozens of portraits of Nanjing Massacre survivors, taken by Wu himself during his interviews with them over the years. At the heart of the museum are themed exhibitions, including the haunting memory of Nanjing during the massacre and the powerful oral histories of war veterans. Looking back, Wu says he never imagined he would one day become the curator of a museum. Like many kids growing up, he dreamed of becoming a police officer or a scientist. But opening a museum, that idea had never crossed his mind. Later in life, he became an entrepreneur, running a factory that produced home renovation materials. As China entered a period of rapid economic growth, his business flourished, building a modest fortune along the way. In the early 2000s, he developed a passion for collecting antiques, artwork, calligraphy. And then one unexpected discovery changed the course of his life.
While collecting, I came across some historical documents. I was curious. I wanted to know what stories these materials were trying to tell. So I reached out to some experts and scholars. They explained to me that what I had found was connected to the war of resistance against the Japanese aggression.
Wu recalls hearing his grandfather speak about those horrific times when he was a child. But back then, he couldn't fully grasp what it all meant. As he grew older and began to explore the history more deeply, a sense of responsibility began to take root. Then a scholar told him that research on the war against Japanese aggression was very limited, far less than what the history deserved, especially given the sacrifices the Chinese people had made.
He told me if the whole of society takes part in remembering history, it becomes a form of reflection, a living way to think about the past. But if only scholars are involved, then it becomes a history that's merely studied, not truly felt.
Wu says he was particularly struck by a Japanese scholar who gave a talk on the war at a university event. The depth of the scholar's research left a strong impression on him.
After the lecture, I asked him which university he worked at. He replied, "I'm not a professor. I'm just an ordinary company worker." His deep research into Chinese history really moved me. And back then in China, public participation in this kind of historical inquiry was still limited. That's when I started to think, what if I could create a museum, a platform for society where more people could get involved? I felt that was a meaningful thing to do.
As an entrepreneur, Wu was no stranger to turning his ideas into action. Once the seed was planted, he didn't hesitate. He began collecting wartime artifacts and books related to that period of history. Within a year, he transformed one of his factory buildings into a museum. When it first opened, it housed only about 300 items and a small collection of books. But for Wu, that wasn't a concern. He believed the most important thing was to build the stage first and let the rest follow in time. In the early days, collecting artifacts became his top priority. He spent countless hours roaming antique shops and flea markets, wandering the streets of Nanjing in every kind of weather, rain or shine. He even traveled to other cities, always on the hunt for pieces of history. Later, with the rise of online shopping, Wu began acquiring items through digital platforms. More recently, he turned to auctions, where the artifacts are more curated, but also come with higher prices. No matter the method, one thing has never changed. Wu has never stopped searching. Today, the museum is almost unrecognizable from what it once was. What began as a modest 400 square meter space has now more than tripled in size, expanding to 1,500 square meters. It now houses over 6,000 historical artifacts and more than 40,000 books related to the war. The collection spans every stage of the war of resistance against Japanese aggression, from documents and weapons to badges, letters, photographs, and personal memoirs. Each object preserves a piece of memory. Among the many treasures, Wu takes particular pride in a copy of Ta Kung Pao newspaper dated August the 15th, 1945, with its bold, oversized headline declaring Japan has surrendered. Another piece that struck him was a humble manuscript typed out word by word by a young man named Tai Chang-sen. While taking refuge in a shelter in 1938, he retyped the book What War Means, Japanese Terror in China by Australian journalist Harold J. Timperley.
Why did he hide in a refugee camp to type out a book? In the preface to the manuscript, he said the West had already read this, but under Japanese occupation, the book couldn't reach people in Nanjing. So he took it upon himself to retype and share it. He had 3 goals. First, to expose the atrocities committed by the Japanese military. Second, to express gratitude to the foreigners who helped the Chinese people. But the third reason is the one that always brings me to tears. During the most desperate days of 1938, this ordinary intellectual wrote these words: "I believe my motherland will ultimately win this war and become a strong nation." At a time of national despair, he never lost faith in China's future. Such spirit is truly precious.
At Wu's museum, there's also a special exhibit dedicated to Iris Cheng, the late Chinese-American author of The Rape of Nanking. In 1995, at the age of 27, she spent 2 months in Nanjing interviewing survivors of the massacre. Her book broke a long-held silence, exposing the atrocities committed by Japanese troops. The 5 original videotapes she recorded during those interviews are now carefully preserved in the museum, along with personal items, including her business card, her glasses, and the handbag she carried.
When Iris Chang came here to interview massacre survivors, she recorded 5 videotapes. Since she didn't speak Chinese, she relied on a local professor to help translate the interviews into English. Then the tapes were left in Nanjing. About a decade ago, with her parents' permission, several professors donated the tapes to our museum. For us, it was deeply encouraging. Iris Chang changed the way the world viewed this part of history. I wouldn't dare say we can change the world too. But as a museum, we believe that through perseverance, we can help advance the study of the war.
Iris Chang took her life in 2004. She was just 36 years old. In 2017, her mother paid a visit to the museum. After touring the exhibit, she left a heartfelt note in the guest book. "Thank you for remembering Iris." Another powerful sight at the museum is a wall of red handprints left by veterans who once fought on the front lines of the war. Each print is a silent yet vivid reminder of those who lived through history. Since 2012, the museum has been involved in interviewing war veterans. It also partnered with Nanjing Normal University to launch a nationwide oral history project, seizing the final opportunity to capture living memories of the war before they fade forever.
说实在话，这项工作真是一个非常艰难的工作，艰难的工作。
To be honest, this was an incredibly difficult task. So many veterans were scattered across the country, and we had to find them one by one. The time and effort it took was enormous, but I believe it was worth it. This project sets our museum apart from others. We were fortunate to document these veterans on film while they were still alive. And now, when younger generations want to know what the war heroes looked like, they can come to our museum.
Wu and his team of about 20 people, along with 200 volunteers from across China, have worked tirelessly on this project. It's a race against time. So far, they've interviewed more than 1,600 veterans. Over the past decade, Wu and his team have taken on another mission, visiting veterans and survivors of the war in their homes. The museum has built a network of around 120 volunteers offering long-term care and emotional support to elderly veterans. They sit with them, chat, and share everyday stories. Wu believes a museum is more than just a place to store artifacts. It's an educational space, a platform for public awareness and reflection. Each year, the museum welcomes around 50,000 visitors, including some from Japan. Since 2014, Wu has also worked to take the museum's message beyond China. He has brought exhibitions to several cities in Japan, including Nagoya, Miyazaki, and Osaka, hoping to help more Japanese people understand this shared and painful chapter of history. According to Wu's observation, most of the visitors at these overseas exhibitions were middle-aged or elderly. Young people were largely absent. But Wu says he won't give up. Spreading awareness, especially across generations and across borders, is in his eyes a responsibility worth carrying. Wu recalls that in the beginning, many people doubted how long the museum would last. Some said it might survive 3 years, maybe 5 at most. Even he never imagined it would survive for nearly 2 decades.
How has it endured to this day? I believe it goes back to my original intention. This museum was never about being big. It was about being carefully curated. Not about size, but about the richness of its collection. We never aimed for fame or visibility. We just wanted to do one thing and do it well. And I think that's what has carried us this far.
As the museum's reputation began to spread beyond China, this year, Wu was invited to Malaysia to attend a commemoration event for the victory in the War of Resistance against Japanese aggression.
Overseas Chinese are family. It's deeply meaningful for us to honor this history together with the Malaysian Chinese community, especially since their contribution to the war effort was immense. One of the most famous examples is the more than 3,000 volunteers from Nanyang.
Historically, Nanyang refers to the region we now call Southeast Asia. Nearly 80 years ago, at a critical turning point in the war, the Nanyang volunteer drivers and mechanics, most of them from Malaysia, risked their lives to reach Yunnan province in southwest China. They played a vital role in helping to ensure the flow of wartime supplies into the country.
When you take the time to truly listen, to dig deep into this history, you'll find stories that are heartbreaking and heroic. People often ask why I'm so passionate about the history of the war of resistance against Japanese aggression. My answer is simple. It's because you haven't studied yet. Once you do, you might find yourself even more committed than I am.
你有没有考虑过它的以后的发展？
When asked about the future of the museum, Wu pauses. He says he hasn't thought about it, at least not yet. Maybe in 5 years, when he is older, he'll start to give it some thought. From a one-man effort to a team of 7 museum staff, Wu says every member is deeply committed. Some have been with him for nearly a decade, working for modest salaries.
I often tell my team, the more effort we put in today, the more hope we create for tomorrow. So we must keep pushing forward, doing the work others avoid, tackling the challenges no one else dares to take on. That's our mission.
If one day the museum were to close, Wu says his deepest hope is that the thousands of artifacts he spent a lifetime preserving wouldn't be scattered again. But until then, his journey continues. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening, and special thanks to Xianbin. If you are interested in hearing more fascinating life stories, be sure to find us at radio.cgtn.com or on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Just key in footprints. You can find more stories anytime, anywhere. I'm Xingyu. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.